Okay. All right. I think we're good to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Roberto Chia-Balmaceda. I am the Fellowship Specialist for the Humanitarian Shelter and Settlements program, funded by the United States Agency for International Development's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. I also work for Habitat for Humanity International under the Disaster Risk Reduction and Response Team. I am joined by one of our practicum fellows from the inaugural 2024 cohort of the Humanitarian Shelter and Settlements Practicum Fellowship, and the project coordinator for disaster risk at the Habitat for Humanity El Salvador National Office. I have asked them here today so that our practicum fellow may have the opportunity to ask questions to a humanitarian shelter and settlement sector professional so that they might impart some insight into their experiences that shape their profession and work at their respective national office. At the end of the interview, we will have a period of Q&A for any members of the audience to share their inquiries to both the fellow and the national office professional. Without further ado, I would like to turn it over to you, Karen, so that you may introduce yourself, and then Gino, you may introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everyone. My name is Karen Devora Cigarroa. I recently graduated from the Colorado School of Mines with a master's in humanitarian engineering and science. And this year, I had the honor of being the practicum fellow and work at Habitat El Salvador.
And my name is Gino Caballero. I'm the DR3 Disaster Risk Response Coordinator for Habitat El Salvador. And I had the pleasure to work with Karen in this project. So nice to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much. Karen, whenever you're ready, please feel free to ask your question.
Awesome. Well, Gino, my first question to you is if you could share a little bit more about your career trajectory and how did you get to Habitat and more specifically into the humanitarian shelter and settlement sector?
Okay, so I'm a civil engineer that for the first years in my career, I was working in the private sector, building bridges, building apartment buildings. And in 2014, I had the chance to obtain a scholarship to study disaster management in Japan. So I went there, I did my studies, and while I was studying there in Japan, I had the opportunity to be the technical advisor for a startup that was working with technology and community-based solution regarding early warning systems. So that was my first work regarding humanitarian response. I was their technical advisor for several years, and after I came back from my scholarship, I had the opportunity to be a volunteer with Habitat El Salvador because one of my dearest friends was working in Global Village there. So after I did several months of volunteering with them I was a, kind of an advisor in DR3. I was supporting them with several initiatives regarding DR3 and regarding early warning systems. I had the opportunity in 2016 to join permanently the organization as the Disaster Risk Reduction and Response Coordinator. So I've been working with them ever since, over 8 years now. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what is the role of the national office in disaster risk reduction response in El Salvador?
So that's a really good question because Habitat El Salvador is part of the humanitarian country team that's led by the United Nations representative in El Salvador. So we are part of this team alongside with UN offices, several other local and international NGOs, and the government. So we are part of several of the clusters within the humanitarian country team, and I'm the representative in the WASH, sanitation and hygiene clusters, CCCM, which is camp coordination and camp management, early reconstruction, and humanitarian settlements. So, no, sorry, shelter clusters. So I've had the chance to work in all of this cluster, represent the organization during the different stages of the response cycle. As a first response, reconstruction, early recovery, and mitigation and preparedness. So we kind of try to do the whole package here in El Salvador through different initiatives. We have the support of the area office for the response with the tide funds, and we have the leadership of Habitat El Salvador always supports our initiatives regarding mitigation and preparedness to work with the community. So. Mhm.
Awesome, thank you. And can you talk more about one of your recent response efforts, especially with like the rains that El Salvador has been facing this year?
So one of the latest events that we had was Tropical Storm Alberto in June this year. So we were affected by this storm, and we reached orange level of the effects of the storm here in El Salvador, because the Civil Protection Department issues these alerts, and whenever the damages in the infrastructure reach certain level, the alert goes might go up all the way to red level. So in this case, we reached yellow and orange level. So there were several damages to some of the communities that we work with. So we requested funds to the area office for the intervention for this tropical storm. We got $75,000. So part of this response that we work with involved reconstruction kits, the NFI kits, and some early reconstruction, as in house improvements to families that were affected by the storms, where there were several damages to either the roofing, or maybe some of the walls of the construction, or their house, and 5 core housing and 2 permanent houses. So basically, that's the response that we're working with the tide funds. And all of these families, we provide them a technical advisory, and we accompany them through this whole process, so they can go from this stage of the response all the way to through the pathway to permanency, to arrive to their permanent housing. Yeah.
Thank you. And I know when I got there, y'all had just sent out the kids, so was able to hear some of the conversations of like future planning and the response. So that was really interesting. During my role in Habitat El Salvador, I was helping with the FASA rollout in the community of Rosario de Mora. And Gino, you led the training of facilitators for myself and other members of Habitat El Salvador's office. So could you explain to us briefly what is FASA?
Cool. PASA, well, for us here in El Salvador, PASA has become one of the greatest tools that we have, because we've been using it since 2017. Yeah, I did the first rollout of PASA, adult PASA, in 2017. It was my first time working with PASA. And PASA, it's an excellent tool because it allows you to work directly with the community, to train and provide tools to the community so they can work themselves solutions to different hazards that they might identify in the community. It doesn't matter if it's hazards within the house per se, but in the habitat of the community, and I think it's a really interesting tool because we had the chance to do several rollouts of PASA, and the results have been incredible. It doesn't matter if it's adult PASA or PASA youth. Uh, the involvement of the community, not just the participants, but the whole community and the municipalities that see what we're doing and how we are working with people, developing capacities within the community. It's always marked the work that we've done, and people always want to, work with us because of that, because of how the community is engaged, and how well things work out in the end. Because even though PASA is 8 activities, but it's not just the 8 activities, because it I've seen it first of all with PASA Youth, because I'm not sure if in other countries where PASA has been implemented, if it's the same thing, because here well in El Salvador, but I'm not sure if in Latin America is the same thing. There's this bridge between the older generation and the new generation, and with PASA Youth, it helps, to reduce this gap between both generations, because all of us, all of the community, the elders and the young generation are trying to work towards the same goal, to be more resilient, to improve the capacity of the community, so that we reduce this gap. And when we found that this is an important tool to unify the community, to make them uh, work as one, I think it's really important, so other national offices can replicate this, to empower and engage all the members of the community, so they can work together towards the greater good, towards having a more resilient, a more prepared community, And even though, as I said before, it's just 8 activities, that you can uh, do within 2 months, the results are beyond what I've seen, are beyond anything that I had seen with other, methodologies, participatory methodology. So I think PASA is a great. Uh, for us, it's a key element that we intend to replicate with other communities and other possible allies in El Salvador. Yeah.
Going to pop in really quickly here. Karen, could you elaborate on what, for the recording, what the acronym for PASA means?
Yes, the participatory approach for safe shelter awareness.
Mhm.
Yes. And Gina, how you mentioned about like unifying the communities, I think that was very much evident when we rolled it out in the community of Rosario de Mora,
Mhm.
where we had within the municipality of Rosario de Mora, we had different communities come together, and just the geography of the municipality, some people were closer to the river, whereas
Mhm.
other people weren't so close. So they were still able to communicate and share their like lived experiences with like how these like um how different hazards presented in their built environment, and he'll still have like empathy between neighbors to like be able to like understand the situations they were facing. So that community unity I think was very evident, especially like within like my experience of doing it in Rosario de Mora. Can you share a bit more about the differences between doing a PASA youth rollout and a PASA adult rollout?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think Pasa Youth, because you use technology and it's more like active methodology, it's easier to young people, to be engaged because they want to know how to use different software, use, their tablet, their smartphones or whatever to do. It's easier to engage them, and I think the methodology it's designed like that, and it's fun for them because we made it fun. Well, we shared with you some photos of the last Pasa Youth that we did. We did disguise ourselves, if you're a Star Wars fan, Kylo Ren, and we did different sessions, doing different stuff, playing football, playing soccer, playing different sports, trying to engage the young people because we had people that were like 9 years old and 22 years old. So we have a lot of variety in the past of participants. However, with the adults, first of all, it's really challenging to keep them participating through the whole rollout because they have different responsibilities and they might not be like that engaged or they have to yeah, tend to church, tend to their families or whatever. So definitely it's really more challenging to engage uh, adults with the methodology, but because I think it's easier for younger people, to be more attractive while using technology. But with other people, you have to really address something that it's bothering them, so they are really engaged. So during the first session, you might uh, they might be really interested, but when you uh, the first session that you do the timeline and the mapping, but afterwards, it's really challenging for them to, well, for us as a team, as a PASA facilitators, it's really challenging to make them participate through the 8 sessions, but uh, the role of the other members of the team, as uh, the liaison between the organization and the community, it's vital for them to keep, calling them and, making them participate. And uh, for some things that worked for us during this implementations with adults, it's first of all, it's doing the sessions in uh, in a time that's it's adequate for them. Maybe Saturdays in the afternoon, or maybe Sundays in the afternoon after church. Because from Monday to Friday they work, and Saturday in the morning they have to do chores or whatever. But you have to adequate yourself to their availability. And one thing that's worked for us is, provide for them, for instance, lunch, breaks, because I know uh, for us it's worked really well. Maybe not as well as, engaging the younger people because of the methodology per se, but we tend to use other strategies to try to engage the adults, even though most of them might not be directly related to the methodology per se. But I think for our experience within El Salvador, it's been easier to work with children and young adults than to work with adults because, as I said before, it's easier to engage them in the methodology. Yeah.
I think some of the challenges that you spoke upon were definitely evident in this rollout. And so thinking it was really fun to like come together and think of strategies of like how to like incentivize these adults, whether it be like the raffle, which I think like afterwards people were like, okay,
Yeah.
if I attend a session, then I get a point for like this raffle, and we were able to give like this disaster readiness kit, which was really nice. Also being able to, you mentioned sometimes during like the season, accommodating like those times, because when we were there, I think the growing season, or they were getting ready for the growing season. So sometimes the weekends were used for that. So having a good understanding of the community was really good. And I think you mentioned the community liaison for the project of Rosario de Mora. We had Ulises, who was vital in like, calling the people. He already had built that rapport within the community. So definitely different components that made the rollout successful. Yeah. So anything else you would like to add about your experience with FASA prior to this project, and the methodology itself?
Pues, as I said before, our first rollout was in 2017, Adult PASA, in a town called Ahuachapan. Uh, it was it was challenging, yes, but we didn't have as you said, a rapport with the community as we had in Rosario de Mora. So that was one of the challenges. Even though we've been working there in that community for several years, but the leadership of the community wasn't as involved, I would say. Afterwards, the next year, we did a Pasayud in that same community, and the young people, the involved within the Pasayud rollout were amazing. We did, and I think that we did a great job. There were we were supposed to have around 10 participants in that rollout. There were always like 20, 22, because as I said before, we made it like interesting for them. We had a big team, of facilitators. Some of them are still with the organizations because there were most of the staff that participated in that year's training of facilitators left the organization by now. So during the Rosario de Mora rollout, basically it was just me from the staff and Kevin, who was at that time in 2017, no, 2018, he was a volunteer. He's part of the staff now. So there were just two facilitators within the team, that received the training uh, a few years back. But we did while preparing to this project for Rosario de Mora, I had the opportunity to do some uh, kind of training of facilitators, although it was virtual, it wasn't on site, but I think it was okay. We have all that register, all those videos. We have them of those sessions, trying to prepare ourselves to the Rosario de Mora rollout, because 5 years after the last one, we were kind of rusty, but I we even got the chance while we were doing these sessions, preparing for the rollout, where people from the República Dominicana participated in these sessions. I was sharing my experience and different tips through the 8 activities, and I think that really uh, helped us in order to work with the communities, because one challenge, as you said, Karen, is that it wasn't just one community. There were several communities working in this rollout, and it's, even though, as you said it, uh, everyone was empathetic of the different problems that other communities were having, but it doesn't it's always challenging, to try to work within a solution that might work for all of them, and not left someone out of the plan, of the response that we're trying to build within the PASA rollout. And other thing that I might add about the PASA experience that we had through the years in El Salvador is that even though we did the last PASA Youth in 2018, some of the PASA children that were in the participating in the rollout are now the leaders of those communities, and they are since we are still working with some of those communities, they're still asking us, do you remember when we did this, and we're trying to replicate some of the things we learned through the methodology, maybe not the whole methodology, PASA methodology, but the different aspects of the methodologies. For instance, they're trying to make their houses more resilient, so they know now, how to evaluate, how to make an action plan, and how to monitor this plan in order to achieve what they are trying to do. So I think several years after the implementation, I think we had amazing results. Some of these now young adults are still trying to, improve and use everything that we taught them. So that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think you touched on it a lot of like how this, like the PASA methodology, through these 8 activities, we don't mean to come in, like one, it's like participatory, right? So it's like community led. And also we don't mean to come in and provide any of the solutions or all the solutions, right?
Mhm.
We do, one of the outcomes from PASA is like the community action plan, but that's
Mhm.
still addressing one of the issues that of the many that they have identified. So I think the biggest takeaway is just like one, that community organization that is left behind, and also community empowerment through the methodology. So that's really nice that you're able to speak upon that. Now, one of my couple, we're nearing the end of the questions I had prepared, so we can open it for Q&A. But what was your experience like working with the HS&S practicum fellowship?
Are you kidding me? First of all, you're an amazing professional. I think one of the, no, if not the most important part of the Rosario Mora PASA rollout success, it's you working with us. For from the first time that we did the interview, I was telling Roberto, who was the guy from Habitat El Salvador that was with me in the interview, she's the one. She and thankfully you chose us too, and and everyone in the team loved you, and everyone in the community loved you, and so you're I mean it, you're an amazing professional, and we were so glad and to work with you. This project was a huge success because of your support and the work you've done with Diana, who was the project manager, and the team, Francis, who's the Flor. Well, Flor was the GV coordinator back then. She's the GV. Francis is now the coordinator, but you had an amazing uh, impact with the team and the community and the project itself. So for us, Habitat El Salvador, we were absolutely delighted with the HS&S practicum, because uh, everything that you gave to the Habitat El Salvador, to the community, the connections that you have with the team, uh, everyone loved you. So yeah, if we in next years we can, be host to other fellows, we will be really, really grateful, because as we've seen with you, Karen, you set the bar really, really, really high. For next fellows, there are huge shoes to fill, because you had an amazing impact. And I hope that you keep working, if not with Habitat El Salvador, but Habitat, as Habitat International, because you're an immersion professional, and hopefully you will, you join the humanitarian sector with Habitat. Yeah.
I appreciate it. It was definitely an amazing experience to be part of. How you mentioned, most of like my like work was with the Pasa rollout, but this was part of like a larger project of like Juntos por Rosario de Mora, which was part of the Home Eagles campaign. So a great team of how you mentioned Diana, the volunteer team, Fancy, Roberto, Flor, who really came together to not only support like the Juntos por Rosario de Mora project, but also the Pasa rollout. And even Gino, when you're like like we virtual meetings through like you were in Paraguay, and you were able to join us for one of the sessions, your input was very much very insightful, especially when the challenges like started rising. We had plans for this, but then as you were putting it into practice. So I think for any person interested in the fellowship, there's a lot of like professional development opportunities, as well as being able to like engage with not only your team with Habitat, but also different actors and the community. So I really enjoyed that experience as well. Would you like to add on anything as far as what other future fellows could gain from this experience?
That's a really good question. I think since Habitat El Salvador is so well placed within the humanitarian context in El Salvador, other fellows in future years can gain much experience working not only in projects related, like other PASA rollouts, but working with different clusters, as in WASH, shelter, CCCM, early recovery. And I think it might be a useful experience for them for their professional development within the humanitarian sector. And since El Salvador is so well placed and has so many allies, IOM, UNICEF, UNHCR, and other humanitarian NGOs, not just local, but also international, World Vision, Plan International, Oxfam, and we work together with the humanitarian country team. So other fellows might have the opportunity not just to work within a habitat project, but have the opportunity to work with other allies, other NGOs that work with shelter, or different UN offices that work within El Salvador for a greater good. I think it's a really good opportunity. And here in El Salvador, we also have all kinds of hazards. It's not just storms, it's not just hurricanes. We have earthquake, volcanoes, drought. So there's a lot you can pick off. So I think it's a really good opportunity for other fellows to work not just with the in the humanitarian shelter, but with the presence that we have within the communities, and have these opportunities to work with the people that we help, uh, might trigger something within them to work or develop their careers within the humanitarian sector.
Definitely. And my last question for you would be, what advice do you have for young professionals who are interested, in building their careers within the humanitarian sector? You have a long career trajectory to speak upon and very great. So any advice would be helpful.
Okay, so for young professionals that are interested in working in the humanitarian sector, is, as I did myself, it was, we say in El Salvador, carambola. It was just like the stars align. You know, I started as a volunteer, helping within a project that was working with communities and early warning systems. So I just had the luck to arrive at the right time, you know, right moment. And as I say, now several years afterwards, is if you wanna start working in the humanitarian sector, start with volunteering. You know, work with professionals within Habitat that are uh, working every day with communities. Uh, Try to learn as much as you can from them. I think the fellowship program is an amazing opportunity for young professionals such as yourself to get a glimpse of what Habitat is, of how Habitat transforms communities, transforms lives of the people in need, and how Habitat works with other organizations, with other UN offices, and it's a great opportunity. It's a great first step within the humanitarian sector, and afterwards there are a lot of different organizations that work with shelter and settlements that have different projects, different visions. And even though if you think that Habitat might not be, which I don't think that, that's going to be the case, but maybe Habitat doesn't suit you, but other humanitarian organizations might, because there's a lot of work to do, and other uh, young professionals that want to work within the humanitarian sector. uh, I think that you need to have this experience, you know, to work directly with the communities and with the people that you're trying to help, to understand how the work you do affects and benefit them. And I think that's the first step, you know, volunteering, uh, working as a fellow, and yeah, that's what got me, you know, here. And hopefully I'll be here several more years. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gino. That would be all the questions I have for you. So thank you for your time. It was great catching up.
it's a pleasure.
So as Karen mentioned, we are also having a Q&A section. So if anyone from the audience would like to ask a question to our panel, I will read them out, and then the appropriate person will answer. Okay, so we have a first question from Enka Marai. Hello, Enka. Have any communities adjacent to those involved in the PASA program adopted or been influenced by its resilient housing methodologies? And what mechanisms facilitate this better knowledge?
Okay, that's a really good question. First of all, with every PASA rollout, we try to invite the municipalities, the disaster, the response team from the municipalities to work with PASA, and uh, when they know the methodology, they try to take some of the activities and replicate them within other of the communities in the same area. So I think that's one of the ways that we influence other adjacent communities through PASA, because we influence directly with the municipalities that work with them, you know. And when after every rollout, we have at least one of the projects that we implement. So when they see that the methodology has directly benefited the community that's participated, they are they ask, you know, what happened? What, how did you get, you know, your roofing fixed, or how did you get the 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 wall fixed in your house? We participated in this project with Habitat. What project? It's called PASA, and we did this. So that's how other communities are interested, and they ask us, we want some. Maybe you can come with us, do a PASA rollout with us, and that's the one of the ways that we are directly influencing, because they see that it's not just get there some workshops and that's it. We always have action plans that we execute within the PASA methodology, so they see that it's not just the workshops. It's not just getting together and doing some fun stuff. We always finish the rollout with a project that directly benefits the community. So they see that what we do, it's not just plans, we take action. So that's how we influence directly other adjacent communities. Did I answer your question? Excellent.
Yes. Thank you, Gino. Another question for you. This one is from Jocelyn Keller. How has PASA evolved during your time utilizing the approach? And then a question for Karen. What is a key lesson you are leaving your fellowship with? So Gino, if you'd like to go first.
Okay, so how has PASA evolved? Okay, so after the first rollout, we finished the methodology just with the action plans. We didn't do a project per se. We didn't finish the methodology with the execution of the plan. We just finished with the plans because there was no budget for the execution of the plan. And that was one of the most important changes that we did to the methodology. We always finish PASA with at least one of the action plans that we execute it, because that gives the community the example that they can execute the action plan. It doesn't have to be a project that you have to involve the municipality or a big company to fund the 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 project. It doesn't have. It can be something as easy and as practical as nature-based solution that have a huge impact within the community, and you reduce those vulnerabilities as a community. So that's what we did in PASA Youth, for example. We had two action plans that we executed. One was a reforestation, and the other one was a cleaning. We cleaned the whole community, and we formed brigades that they continuously clean the community with, because that was one of their main concerns. And now with the Rosario de Mora, we had also an action plan that we also executed. So that's one of the things that we added to the PASA methodology, and I think that's been a key aspect that really gives a plus to the rollout per se, because finally the community sees that they can take action and they can change their community, just finishing and taking action using the action plan that they work with for a couple of months. And it's up to them, to reduce these vulnerabilities within the community. So yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the key lessons that I'm being with the fellow or leading the fellowship with would be, I always knew I really wanted to go into like the humanitarian sector, and just figuring out like which way to go about it was definitely something that I was very open to. But within like this experience, especially with the Pasarela and just the community engagement, prior to like I grew up in Texas, so I think the hazard that we have is like tornadoes, and even then, like I was like very fortunate to not be directly impacted, but being in El Salvador and again having these conversations not only with the community members but also just people, you know, like in Habitat or staff or like the people that I met throughout like the fellowship experience, you get to see how like disasters or hazards impact people's like day-to-day lives, and just like the importance of like, you know, addressing some of these issues, right? So I remember one of the conversations that we would have, you know, throughout the workshops is like, you know, like the people would talk about like the rainstorms or like, you know, the storms that they would impact them, right? And a lot of it was like, we can't do anything about the storms, but what can we do to prepare or mitigate like, you know, the impact of these on our built homes? So, you know, reframing that frame of thought of like the storms for as like, what can I do like myself? And I think that was like a more empowering point of view to like look at the thing or at the issue. So I think definitely um, facing these like initiatives around communities is very, very important because, you know, they are the ones who know these areas are the ones that are mostly impacted. Or like during this time, I know that, you know, um, the river may grow and like, you know, I'll start seeing flooding in my home. So I think that was definitely one of like the biggest key lessons, you know, not only like I would really like to explore more like disaster and how like my role as a professional could be, but still, you know, like leading with like how important it is to base it on community knowledge.
Okay, thank you, Karen. This one's also for Karen from Jaime Mock. What was the most valuable lesson, in your opinion, that you learned from working hands-on with professionals and mentors in El Salvador?
Oh, one of the most valuable lessons. I would say from the experience that I had, um, it was just definitely the community engagement, which I was like very much looking forward to in the fellowship experience. But I think it was just like very impactful because you could read about, you know, like all the statistics, you know, like preparing for it, I was like, you know, reading about like El Salvador and like, you know, it's like Gino mentioned it's prone to many hazards, right? Like volcanoes, earthquakes. My first experience there was actually like experiencing an earthquake. Like, you know, we were like, I was at a volunteering event with Habitat and like all of a sudden it started shaking and I really didn't know what was going on until like I captured later that, okay, this is what an earthquake feels like, you know? But being exposed to those hazards, and also like being able to like hear about it and how it was the communities themselves were being impacted by them was definitely one of the most valuable ones. As for, you know, working with professionals and mentors in El Salvador, with the team in Habitat, I really got to see how they try to do like, you know, like social interest housing, but that does not mean that the quality or the accessibility is, you know, compromised. And I saw it not only in the quality of work that all the team had, you know, and how invested they were with the families that they were serving, in all different areas. I also worked with like the construction team and was able to be part of like how they were designing new housing designs. So again, like trying to make them more sustainable. So I thought that was very like very valuable in the sense of like how they're able to make these like houses more accessible for the people there, but still like delivering quality services and quality homes. So yeah, always seeking to improve was something that I thought like the Habitat team or the Habitat office in El Salvador had, and that was very great to be a part of. You know.
Great, thank you, Karen. Okay, if we don't have any more audience questions, I have some questions for you guys, and I'm going to start with Gino. What's next for you and Habitat El Salvador following your time with Karen in the fellowship?
So, well, so after, we already finished the project that kind of was helping us with. And now as DR3, disaster risk reduction and response and humanitarian response, we're working now, as I said before, we're working with a project for response for the storms. And actually, we're as a national office, we're working, the with the planning for the next 5 years and how we can, improve or align the SDGs with habitat for the next 5 years. So one of my roles in this strategic planning for the next 5 years is trying to align Habitat's vision with climate change adaptation for working with vulnerable communities and working with vulnerable families so we can provide safe access for adequate housings for these families with taking into account everything we've learned so far about climate change, building back better, and well, mitigation and preparedness. So it's a lot of work, yeah, but I think for the next couple of months, we're gonna decide the future for Habitat El Salvador in the DR3 area and our goals for the next 5 years. And hopefully, fingers crossed, that we get the chance to get other fellows such as Karen, because I think we're going to need all the help we need. And I think it's a win-win scenario. We get the chance to, get all the knowledge from these young professionals, and they get to experience working directly with families. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Gino. And Karen, what's next for you after the fellowship's conclusion?
Yes, so after my fellowship conclusion, right now I'm looking for a full-time job, focusing more on like climate change resilience and disaster-related sectors. So very excited for that would look like, and looking to volunteer locally here in Dallas with Habitat for Humanity. So just continuing.
That's great to hear. All right, if we have any last minute questions from the audience that we'd like to answer, going to keep it open for a couple more minutes. I guess to fill those couple of minutes, Gino, in your experience and having worked with FASA, do you feel like there should be more of an emphasis on resilience in the face of disasters and a world that's experienced greater climate change, or in disaster response efforts, or should those go hand in hand?
That's a really good question, Bob. I think we have to work toward preparedness. The problem here in El Salvador, I think, and I think it might be the same in other regions in Latin America, is that we are we work entirely on response. We don't put enough effort and on mitigation and preparedness. So we are reactive instead of preparing ourselves or developing capacities towards our communities so they are more resilient and safer conditions towards hazards. So I think you have you have to work on resilience, but you have to prepare for the worst. So I think I really think that we have to work on resilience, but you cannot live, preparedness, like dragon. I think your efforts maybe not 50-50, because I think we have to work towards preparedness, but maybe 60-40, something like that. But I know it's really difficult, to get resources from donors or international cooperation to work towards preparedness and resilience, or building resilience, because most of the funding is for early reconstruction and response, but we have to find a way, to be creative to working without building proposals for climate change adaptation, and resilience, so we can, access these funds so we can, prepare ourselves or prepare our communities, prepare our staff, toward these scenarios. But yeah, I think in El Salvador case, I think we have a little bit more emphasis in preparedness than response, but you cannot live response, all the way back there. You kind of have to be hand in hand. Yeah.
Thank you, Gino. All right, well, thank you again to our panel. We're really, really happy to have you guys here. And thank you for everyone who attended. We will be having our final webinar for the Practicum Fellowship this Wednesday at 10 a.m. With our Malawi Practicum Fellow and their supervisor. So thank you once more, and I hope you guys have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.